4, 3, 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining the executive today are Dr. James Bridgers, who is the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Assistant Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. Earl Stoddard, who is Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and our special guest this afternoon is Congressman Jamie Raskin. Gabe Albornoz, also the Director for Montgomery Recreation, is joining us. Thank you, everybody. Mr. County Executive, the floor is yours, and the Congressman has a hard stop at 1 o'clock.
All right. We'll get this done quickly. Thanks for being here today, everybody. And, tomorrow begins our Independence Day celebrations, marking the 250th anniversary of our nation's independence and also the inception of our county. And that's a remarkable milestone. And like most anniversaries, though, it's an opportunity to celebrate our successes, but also to reflect honestly on how far we've come and how far we need to go. Making progress in our nation has never moved in a straight line. We've expanded rights, but we've also taken a step backwards. I think we can see that now. We've corrected mistakes, and sometimes we've had to fight the same battles more than once. The Supreme Court reminded us of that this week. Their reminders that the promise written into our Constitution doesn't automatically protect themselves. Every generation has had to decide whether they're going to live up to those promises or narrow them. We seem to have some people who think we ought to be narrowing them. Despite the current trends of the federal government, when I think specifically about the history of and the progress made in Montgomery County, I'm somewhat optimistic. 60 years ago, this was a largely segregated community with limited opportunities for housing and jobs for the Black population. We had covenants on much of the property here that restricted who could live in much of the county. Those covenants ended in 1967, but that alone didn't end segregation. There was more work that needed to be done. And today, though, we've evolved into one of the most diverse counties, if not the most diverse in the United States. That's a remarkable journey when you think about it. There have long been residents who challenge the status quo, and they've helped to shape our community. Our county has always been shaped by people who challenge the status quo. That's true for the country as well. That has made America better than what it was like when people first thought about how we need to change things. We were founded as a country that was controlled by white males who owned property, who were the only people who could vote and hold office. It was something like 6% of the population had any political say. The last state to eliminate property requirements came on board in 1856. Citizens were only allowed to directly elect our senators starting in 1914. White women weren't allowed to vote until 1920, and protection to the right to vote for African Americans didn't come until the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. This is a history that most people don't know, and I often feel that people don't appreciate the decades of struggle in this country to create the democratic rights that all of us hold dear. This was not always the land of the free. These are times when, in particular, the assault on the Black community and their voting rights is a reminder that this dark path that we've walked before, it's a path that's unworthy of the values that we say we uphold. We have work to do, and here are some of the local heroes who've done that work. Josiah Henson escaped from slavery and helped other people find freedom. Rachel Carson changed the way the world thinks about protecting our environment. Clara Barton devoted her life to caring for people in their greatest moments of need. And Thurgood Marshall, long before being the first Black Supreme Court justice, he fought for equal pay for Black teachers in Montgomery County. All this while our scientists search for cures, our teachers prepare for the next generation, and our first responders answer every hour of the day. People from every corner of the world have built their lives here because they believe this country can continue becoming a more perfect union. And that's why I remain optimistic even in difficult times. Being patriotic isn't about pretending your country's perfect. It's believing that your country's worth improving. It's worth the work to do it. That's the lesson of the last 250 years. Every generation has been asked to leave America stronger, fairer, and more just than they found it. And with that, I'm pleased to welcome Congressman Jamie Raskin back to my media briefing this week. Congressman Raskin, who is also the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, has long been a constitutional champion and and the champion of our democratic institutions. So, Jamie, thank you for your work, and look forward to hearing from you.
I'm psyched to be with you, Mark. Thank you. Happy 4th of July to everybody. Happy Independence Day. It's always a huge, popular, exuberant holiday here in Montgomery County. And I look forward to seeing people out at all the parades and the picnics and the fireworks shows and stuff. Hey, we can celebrate at least one major Supreme Court decision. I mean, it was an obvious one. It should not have been such heavy lifting, but nonetheless, it came out the right way, either 5-4 or 6-3, depending on how you count it. This is the birthright citizenship case, which found that no, President Trump could not, by executive order, nullify the first sentence of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof shall be a citizen of the United States and the state therein where they reside. That has, in some sense, been the heart of the new Constitution that we got out of the Civil War and the Reconstruction Amendments. The idea that citizenship is based on being born here. It's our birthright for everybody. It's no longer going to be based on race, as the Supreme Court had it before in the Dred Scott decision. It's not going to be based on gender or on ethnicity or religion or any of that stuff. It's going to be based on the country belonging to everybody who's born here. I mean, it's amazing to me that you did have 4 justices, Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, who took the position that Congress could strip birthright citizenship simply by passing a statute. And so we're not totally out of the woods there yet, but we certainly have enough to celebrate for on the 4th of July in 2026 that birthright citizenship survived. The Supreme Court has done some other stuff, which I find profoundly objectionable, including ripping the doors off the hinges for what remains of campaign finance law, saying that there can be unlimited money that goes not just from super PACs into people's individual races, but from national political parties. So that's going to be another major headache when we get into the 2026 elections. And of course, those campaigns have started. And some other problematic stuff, but maybe we should just dwell on the birthright citizenship case, because there's not a lot of good news out of the Supreme Court these days. Although I should say that the federal district courts and the federal appeals courts have been doing a great job in defending the rights and the freedoms of the people against sustained, unremitting attack by this presidential administration.
Thank you, Congressman. You ready for questions?
Let's open it up.
Okay, let's do that. I see. Okay, Ms. Hackleby. But that's up today. Good afternoon. You go first.
Good afternoon. Hi, Representative Raskin. Question for you. In light of these 3 recent Supreme Court opinions and others this term, curious if you would support Congress acting either to limit the president's power regarding executive orders, and also whether you're in favor of any sort of additional guardrails on the Supreme Court, whether that be term limits or something else. I know you've previously introduced legislation aimed at the shadow docket, but just curious for your thoughts on kind of some of those other questions.
I appreciate both those questions. First of all, no, I would not be opposed to taking down executive orders because we know what an executive order is. An executive order is beneath a federal law, which is beneath the Constitution of the United States. So we already have the whole arsenal that we need to take down unlawful, unconstitutional executive orders. Now, we definitely need more justices who are going to do the obviously right thing. Trump's birthright citizenship executive order cut directly against the text of the Constitution, the history of the Constitution, all of the Supreme Court precedent, and federal law itself, which is why it was amazing to me that you still had some of the MAGA justices coming down the other way. But as for Supreme Court reform, we absolutely need it. In Congress, we have a $50 gift ban. So we basically just don't take gifts, and that $50 gift ban theoretically applies to the executive branch. We just saw some more financial disclosures from Donald Trump, where he's made more than $2 billion on crypto alone, which is more than double what every member of the House and Senate together have made in our salaries. And that's just his crypto flow of money. It doesn't even get into all of the money coming in from foreign governments and foreign states in direct violation of the Foreign Emoluments Clause, and all the money being taken from the U.S. government in violation of the Domestic Emoluments Clause, because the Constitution limits the president to his own official salary, and he can't be taking any other money at hotels, for example, from the U.S. government. But in any event, the Supreme Court has let us down on a lot of stuff, and we can see that, in the shadow docket, where you take a perfectly well-reasoned and authoritative and magisterial lower court decision, like from the D.C. Circuit on birthright citizenship, but on other stuff, like take, for example, the presidential immunity decision, and they reverse the lower court with either a terribly reasoned, just made up, fictionalized decision like they did with presidential immunity, or sometimes they'll just reverse it with one sentence or one paragraph without even explaining why they're doing that. So yes, I've got legislation about the shadow docket to require the Supreme Court to enunciate its reasoning and to state its analysis and to stop overturning all these lower courts with one sentence or one paragraph summary reversals. And look, we need a binding ethics code for the Supreme Court of the United States. It's the only Supreme Court in America that doesn't have a binding ethics code. All 50 states have a binding ethics code and a process by which you can appeal unethical things, wrongful things that are taking place in the court. And here, the system is, if you've got a problem with, something that Justice Alito or Justice Gorsuch has done, you have to appeal to Justice Alito or Justice Gorsuch. They decide their own case, which of course violates what James Madison called the primary principle of our jurisprudence, which is that no man can be a judge in his own case. And that's exactly how they deal with ethics problems on the Supreme Court. They don't deal with them, in other words. So, yes. Now, as for the ultimate question of whether we're going to have to reverse several years of court packing and court stacking by the Republicans by changing the number of justices and the composition of justices, it's a more complicated question. But for everybody to understand, Mitch McConnell said when President Obama nominated our fellow Montgomery County resident, Merrick Garland, to the Supreme Court, 11 months is too close to the next election. We could never do that. We're going to let the people decide. Of course, the people had decided in electing President Obama to one of those genuine 4-year terms. But in any event, he said, we're not going to allow Merrick Garland a hearing. We're not going to allow him a committee vote. We're not going to allow him a vote on the floor. And they didn't because, he said that Scalia's death 11 months before the election was too close. Well, then they ended up filling that seat with Justice Gorsuch when Trump became president. But then in the last 2 months of the Trump administration, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died in September, right before the election. So not 11 months before the election, 2 months before the election. So the press said to Mitch McConnell, you're not going to fill that seat, right? And he laughed it off. He said, of course we're going to. That was just a rule we had for the Democrats. It was a big joke for him. So then they barreled through the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, who ended up taking Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the great champion of equality and freedom and women's rights. They took her seat with Amy Coney Barrett. So that's 2 seats right there, creating that 6-3 mega majority on the court. And they should have come out to be Democratic appointees. It should have been 5-4 in the other direction. So what do we do about this packing and stacking of the courts, the ethics crisis, the legitimacy crisis on the Supreme Court? Well, just to give you a glimpse of my thinking about it, we've got 13 federal circuits in America. We only have 9 justices. There used to be 1 justice for every federal circuit. That's what circuit riding was all about. The justices, after being seated with their Supreme Court colleagues, they would go back to their circuit and deal with all of the work there. Well, they're four circuits that don't have a justice. And in fact, it's much worse than that. Right now, we have five justices from the New York City metropolitan area. We basically have one justice for every borough in New York City. We have entire parts of the country where we have no representation on the Supreme Court. So that's one way of beginning to think about what we really could be doing to rebalance things after this period of court packing and stacking and the way that the Supreme Court has really ridden off the rails.
Thank you,
Thank you, Congressman.
Congressman.
Yeah, I can stay, by the way, until 1:10 now if you want to keep me a little bit longer.
Okay, excellent. Any additional questions for the Congressman? No more questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So back when the president seized his first oil tanker and he sold the oil for $30 million, the story was that that money went to a Qatari bank account and he was the only person on the bank account. And since that was reported in regular reputable news, how are people on the Hill digesting this idea that you can appropriate money from the sale of something ostensibly under the auspices of the United States and it goes in a bank account that only the president controls?
Well, we're not really digesting that. We're regurgitating that. We're rejecting that, which is why right before we left last week, I introduced a discharge petition for my legislation to block the $1.776 billion political slush fund that the president wanted to create in the Department of Justice to put in his pockets and then to turn over at his whim and decision to Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and other convicted criminals from January 6th who attacked our officers, including 50 Montgomery County officers in their effort to storm the Capitol and overthrow an election. So yes, they are trying to create slush funds everywhere you turn. That Venezuela example is striking because the money is going to a bank account under President Trump's exclusive control in Qatar. He did the same thing with the so-called Board for Peace. They took $1.5 billion out of the State Department money that was supposed to be there for disaster relief around the world, and they put it into this Board for Peace account. We don't know what they're going to do with it. We don't know, is this a public entity, a private entity, for profit, not for profit? I can tell you that Congress has not authorized it. Congress did not set it up. The head of the Trademark Patent Office, for some reason, filed for a trademark for it. That is totally unprecedented, working for the president's own private outfit. All we know is that Donald Trump has declared that he is the chairman for life of this entity, which is now asking for $1 billion from Qatar, $1 billion from Saudi Arabia, and we put in $1.5 billion of American taxpayer money. So it's just slush funds all the way down, Mark, and we need to break that up and try to reclaim that money. The public has very much seized on what's been happening with the reflecting pool, which I hear some of my neighbors have been calling the Strait of Warm Ooze. But people understand, okay, that's just an absolute waste of our money, $16 million. But of course, it's a pittance compared to the billions of dollars that they've been looting and misspending for other purposes across the government.
So as you sit over there, I imagine you encounter Republicans in the hall and perhaps casually in conversation. Do you ever get a sense that people are reaching limits, that people have, at some point this is going to be too much for some of them?
Well, I know we're reaching those limits because, Liz Cheney is gone, Adam Kinzinger is gone, Mitt Romney is gone, Marjorie Taylor Greene is gone, Tucker Carlson has left the Republican Party in protest of what's happening. This is taking place on a daily basis. I hear from constituents who have been lifelong Republicans, especially from a lot of veterans and people in the armed forces who say they can't take it anymore. This is not what they fought for. And what's happening is, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Everybody sees that the whole thing has been a money-making operation, a get-rich-quick scheme from the beginning. And we're still in the fight of our lives. I mean, we have to do everything we can to try to reclaim and restore constitutional government in our democracy, but we are still very much in the fight of our lives.
So I know you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm curious because I listened to some of the stuff she's been saying, and I got to say, some of it sounds like things that Democrats would say, particularly when she's talking about who's being hurt and who needs help out there. And I'm just wondering, are there opportunities in some people who we think of as more conservative to figure out, are there places where we might actually find enough common ground? If these are the people they want to take care of and we want to take care of the same people, are there opportunities to figure out, is there any kind of path to at least work with people?
Very much so. I mean, we've seen that over the Epstein files, where again, it's all the Democrats and it's, a small number of Republicans, but enough, 8 or 10 of them who've come with us to demand disclosure of the Epstein files. I'm hoping that we will get 6 Republicans who will join us on the discharge petition to blockade this $1.8 billion political slush fund that Trump wants. So I think more and more we are seeing that. I mean, we live in a country where we don't have, or at least traditionally not had, strong ideological political parties and polarization. There's more fluidity. And I think that there is a lot more fluidity right now. And that gives me, great hope for resurrecting the basic constitutional principles of the country. I mean, you saw the other day, Trump has a religious freedom commission, which declared that the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution, which of course is literally correct. Neither is Christian white nationalism in the Constitution, but we do have the Establishment Clause saying that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. But every one of the basic pillars of our constitutional democracy are under attack. I mean, as much as the White House itself is being bulldozed, think of the Constitution being attacked in the same way.
Congressman, if I may, there are a couple of reporters with their
Yeah.
hands up. Ms. Hackaway, you go, and Judith will get you after. Go ahead before he departs.
Judy can go first. I got one already.
Okay, go ahead, Judith. The greater
Oh,
only news.
Thanks very much. Congressman, so will this fight of our lives that we're in the midst of get better if the midterm elections flip the numbers?
Well, I think so. It's going to be a long walk home, as Springsteen reminded us when he came to town and sang. I mean, we're not going to be able to reverse all the damage overnight. I mean, look at our constituents who worked at aid all over the world, who were, summarily fired. Their projects against hunger, against HIV/AIDS, against malaria, just blown to smithereens by Elon Musk and by Doge and Donald Trump. A lot of those people have left the government. Would they come back? I don't know. How are you going to rebuild the relationships with all those countries? I don't know. Same thing with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which saved American consumers tens of billions of dollars from systematic white-collar fraud. A lot of our constituents have been hurt in the demolition of CFPB in their work. Same thing at the Department of Education, at NIH. We've been in a struggle from the beginning to defend those programs and defend those grants. And I said to Trump, how can you be attacking the programs doing research on the killer diseases of our day, like cystic fibrosis and multiple sclerosis and breast cancer and malignant narcissistic personality disorder? I mean, we're not going to make progress on anything if we are cutting the heart out of the NIH budget. So we are going to rebuild. We must rebuild, and we're going to have to rebuild on a stronger basis and make everything better so that we're never vulnerable to an attack like this again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sully, you want to go now?
And then I better go after that one.
Yes. Recognizing this might be tough to answer succinctly, I wanted to just real quick get your take on the Supreme Court decision regarding Title IX and transgender rights. I don't think I heard you touch on it in the beginning, so I just wanted to
Yes. I mean, I've sped read that one. I have not closely read that one yet, and that's on my schedule for today. But um, you know, I guess the big thing from a local government perspective is the Supreme Court's decision allowed the exclusion of transgender kids from sports. It's outrageous almost to state the whole thing. It allowed it, but it didn't require it. And that means that local governments have the power to make these decisions in a fine-grained way. And there's been such hysteria and such distortion of this issue that it has blocked from view the central point, which is athletics and sports are there for everybody, and they are there for every child to be able to grow athletically, physically, emotionally, socially. And that's basically what we are committed to. So local governments can and should continue to do the right thing and to make all of these choices in a way that fits our values and our priorities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman Raskin, for joining us this afternoon. We do know you have to depart. Thank you for staying a few extra minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you
Thank you,
soon.
Jamie. Carry on.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks everybody for what you're doing. And I saw Gabe Albernaz out there at a certain point. Thank you, Gabe, for everything you've done. And congratulations to all of our fine candidates on their fine races and their elections. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy 4th, everybody.
Okay, Mr. County Executive, other topics.
All right. Meanwhile, back to Independence Day. This year, we have to keep in mind that extreme temperatures are in the forecast, and we need to take steps to stay healthy and also to celebrate safely. The county is hosting 2 events. One is Montgomery County's 250th Shine Together celebration on Friday, July 3rd. That's going to be at Einstein High School. And one of my favorite bands, the Nighthawks, is going to be performing. So I'm excited about that. And the concert begins at 7:30. On Saturday, July 4th, Up County will have its own celebration with Germantown Glory starting at 7:30, and that will be at the Big Park in Boyd's. Thankfully, these events are not happening during the heat of the day, but even so, we're delaying the usual start of each event to beat the heat. Those planning to attend either event should check Montgomery County Recreation's website for any additional weather-related changes. Updates are also going to be shared through Alert Montgomery. Another thing to remember on Independence Day is the Defense Department will be conducting military aircraft flyovers beginning just after 1 p.m. and continuing hourly throughout the day. The flyovers will take place over the Washington, D.C. region and will include a wide range of military aircraft, and remind your audiences to expect periodic aircraft noise and brief interruptions in normal outdoor sound levels throughout the day. The county also has 6 designated sites in the community as cooling centers, and they'll be available on Friday and Saturday when county government buildings are closed for the holiday. They'll be open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and they're intended as places for residents to come indoors and cool off. The locations have been selected to best serve all of our residents, and to pay attention to what these are. East County Community Rec Center, 3310 Gateshead Manor Way in Silver Spring. The Jane Lawton Community Recreation Center, which is at 4301 Willow Lane in Chevy Chase. The Rockville Memorial Library, 21 Maryland Avenue in downtown Rockville. The Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center, 1319 Apple Avenue in Silver Spring. The Upper County Community Rec Center, 8201 Emery Grove Road in Gaithersburg. And the Wheaton Community Rec Center, 11701 George Avenue in Wheaton. These buildings will be partially open to help residents cool off. Other county services typically provided at these locations will not be available, including weight rooms, game rooms, and gymnasiums. I want to thank our staff for giving up part of their holiday to serve our residents. I also want to thank our Department of Transportation for handing out free water to riders, and our outreach teams in Bethesda, Wheaton, and Silver Spring for keeping an eye on those who are at risk of heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Earlier this week, county leaders held a press conference to stress the importance of taking this heat seriously. It's important to remember to stay hydrated, watch for signs of illness, and limit your time outdoors during the hottest part of the day. Other reminders include never, and never means never, leave kids or pets alone in the car. Avoid strenuous activities in the heat of the day, like exercising or gardening. But going back to never leaving the kids and pets in the car, it can get extraordinarily hot really quickly inside of a car. And it is not safe for your kids, and it's not safe for your pets. And it does not take long for the temperatures rise to unsafe levels. So this really is a never. And we're going to be on alert to make sure we don't see kids and pets in cars because it's just not safe. If you're outside, protect yourself by wearing light colored clothing, a hat, sunglasses, and sunscreen. Check on your neighbors, friends, and family, particularly those who live alone and those who may be at higher risk of heat-related illnesses. Really think about some of the elderly folks in our community who have limited mobility, maybe limited ability to get around. Be aware of their situation. If you're in a neighborhood where not every house has air conditioning and somebody's living in a house without air conditioning, check in on them. It's going to get blistering hot inside people's houses. This is, I think, important for us to help take care of each other. We need to help everybody stay safe. And you can stay on top of all heat-related warnings and closures and updates by signing up for Alert Montgomery if you haven't done that already. Our county website will also provide updates if there are any additional changes. As we hit this milestone, I encourage everyone to visit our special website, montgomery250.org, and take some time to learn our history and appreciate our progress and celebrate together. As we discussed a little bit earlier, over the last week or so, we've seen some pretty shameful decisions handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Not out of character, shameful just the same. But I want to start with a rare win before focusing on the negative. The Supreme Court has thankfully reaffirmed a promise this country has kept since 1868. Every child born on American soil is an American. The fact that this was in jeopardy is sad and a warning. Relief is not the same as safety. A basic constitutional promise should not be something our families have to win back every few years. This matters deeply here in Montgomery County, where 4 in 7 children have at least one immigrant parent, most of them born in the United States, most of them being the children. The ruling means that their citizenship and their children's is secure, not subject to the politics of this moment. Maryland was part of the coalition of states that stood up for that principle, and I'm grateful that they did. We also learned that the court won't even look into whether this administration followed the law when it stripped the temporary protective status, or TPS, from our Haitian and Syrian neighbors. That closes the courthouse door and it pulls away the legal protection that stood between every other TPS holder and the same fate. The notion that Haiti and Syria are safe to return to is absolutely ludicrous. No human being should be sent to either of those countries right now. Nothing has improved in either of those countries to the point that it indicates that human rights are going to be respected. The decision was specifically about our Haitian neighbors, but it also potentially affects all 33,000 plus Marylanders who have TPS status. People from El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, Syria, Somalia, and more, many of whom have built lives here for decades. They've bought houses, they pay taxes, they raise kids who are U.S. citizens, they work in our hospitals, you find them on job sites and in restaurants. They own businesses. Now they've been told they can be sent back to countries that aren't safe. So this isn't just a threat to the Haitians and Syrians, other groups, and I think the next group up is El Salvador. All it would take for the president is now to say you're no longer protected. And going back to El Salvador with its notorious prison system and its utter disregard for human rights is going to be problematic for people who've not committed any crimes and have no reason to think they should go back to El Salvador and face being imprisoned. So we're concerned losing TPS means losing your work permit and your legal right to be here. Someone with a home, a job, and children can now be detained and deported at any time. We're talking about our neighbors, coworkers, and friends, and what's happening to them is cruelty being dressed up as a policy. The court also ruled the government can turn away asylum seekers before they ever reach U.S. soil. I think about, people who tried to reach the United States and successfully reached the United States in World War II. But I also think about a certain boat with Jewish passengers that was actually turned back from the United States. We should not be denying families fleeing violence the chance to even ask for safety. They should at least have the opportunity to seek asylum. Seeking asylum isn't some new invention. Seeking asylum is something that people have been doing for decades and decades. It's not a crime. It's actually written into our laws. Montgomery County will remain a place that meets people fleeing harm with dignity, not with a closed door, but we're not going to be able to do anything about this at the federal level. Montgomery County does not ask about immigration status when you come to us for help. Our local laws keep county resources out of federal deportation efforts. Our health and human services stay open to every resident regardless of status. And we can't undo the decisions made in Washington, but no one here is going to have to face this alone. So if you or someone you love has temporary protective status, don't panic or act on rumors. We're working through what this ruling means for our residents, and we'll share clear guidance soon. In the meantime, check your status at uscis.gov. Talk to a trusted legal provider before making decisions. Work with some of our nonprofits. Reach out to the Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center for accurate information and real help. Be careful about lawyers offering to help you who may not have the expertise and may simply be trying to take financial advantage of you. We've got trusted partners. We can help you direct you to lawyers who we know are trustworthy and will look at it for your best interests. So don't just simply, in desperation, go with the first person that says, I can work on you with this. Make sure that you know they actually can help you. I was disappointed by the Supreme Court's decision to uphold laws in West Virginia and Idaho to keep transgender athletes from girls and women's sports teams. Many transgender residents, especially young people in the county, now feel isolated and singled out. I want our transgender community to know that you are seen, you are valued, and you remain an important part of Montgomery County. History shows that progress toward equal rights has rarely followed a straight line. It has come because people refuse to give up on the principle that every individual deserves dignity and equal protection. Montgomery County is going to continue to stand with our LGBTQ plus community, and we're going to continue working with our schools, our healthcare providers, our community organizations and advocates to make sure every young person knows they have a place here. No one should lose hope about a just future. I'm also deeply concerned about the ruling that further eviscerates the country's campaign finance laws, a process that began with Citizens United and that ruling 15 years ago. Here in Montgomery County, we've seen yet another campaign season with obscene amounts of spending on false and misleading ads. While it's not always successful, fortunately, it threatens to drown out the voices of voters and to distort information. It should be a concern of everyone that, this country has laws about truth in advertising. There is a specific exemption to truth in advertising laws for political speech. Just ponder that for a moment. You can get up on TV, do a political ad, blatantly lie, say things that anybody who's got the time to fact check can show are false, and you can do that. And this law incentivizes it. So someday, perhaps when we have sensible people back in Congress, we'll reinstall the fact that, protected speech and advertising does not mean you get as a politician to go out and just lie blatantly. It's not a good thing. And it's one of the things that is, I think, really harming American politics. On the good news, the importance of the county's minimum wage law, July 1st brought another important update to those making the least in our county. That update is to their paychecks, and it's quite by design. We use the fiscal year to make minimum wage adjustments that reflect our commitment to building an economy that works for everyone. When wages keep pace with inflation, working people aren't forced to fall behind as everyday costs rise. Back in 2017, when I was on the council, I sponsored the legislation that ties our minimum wage to the Regional Consumer Price Index. Every year on March 1st, the rate gets recalculated based on how much cost went up in the year before. That means when rent goes up, when groceries go up, and when every other cost rise, wages for our lowest paid workers rise with them. They just don't fall further behind. I believe this is one of the most important things that we have done as a local government. If the federal minimum wage had been indexed to inflation years ago, we probably wouldn't have needed to pass this law at the local level at all. But it wasn't. The current federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That in itself ought to be a crime. And wages stagnated for years while costs kept climbing. So at least we did something about it here. This isn't just good for workers, though. It's actually good for our local economy. When people have more in their pockets, they tend to spend it locally. Folks in these income brackets are not spending their money on luxury vehicles and fine art. That money gets recirculated back in the community. It's another pair of pants or a jacket for a kid. It's more food on a table. It's taking your kids to a movie, doing things that people on limited incomes are really stretched to do sometimes. That money winds up supporting our small businesses, and that spending is important. It also gives employers predictability that they know the rate's going to move each year rather than being surprised by it. At a time when federal policy is letting billionaires get wealthier by the minute, I'm proud Montgomery County has a law that at least makes sure our lowest paid workers don't lose ground. But I can't talk about this without just pointing out one little serious flaw with the minimum wage law, if you're concerned about how it impacts the person's ability to live here. And this is tied to what we did with rent stabilization. The majority of the council voted to allow rents to rise 3% above the inflation rate. Rents are a person's largest expenditure in their budget. And allowing rents to rise faster than inflation is a real problem when the minimum wage law is tied to inflation. So while for many people it'll mean that your rents and inflation will keep pace, landlords aren't bound by keeping their increases at inflation or below. For that, we have to rely on the market suppressing rising rents sufficiently that they don't go above it. But there are landlords who exceed the minimum wage, and not everybody. And the residents who live in apartments with landlords who are going to push their rents higher than the minimum wage increase are going to find themselves falling behind. I think it's something the county needs to address going forward. Before we open it up to questions, I'd like to give my staff an opportunity to provide any updates they want to share. And I'll start with my health team.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. With this extreme heat that is coming up, we just wanted to highlight a few other services that are available through HHS in the county. If you see someone who is experiencing homelessness or is unhoused, we do not want them exposed to the extreme heat elements. And we have a homeless information line, 240-907-3688. We also want to remind folks that we have our mental health crisis line. You can call or text 988 to speak with a mental health professional. If you need or someone you observe needs in-person crisis outreach, either for mental health or substance use issue, we have our mobile crisis outreach team, or our MCOT, and that's at 240-777-4000. I'm going to drop those three numbers in the chat. I also just want to stress, as the county executive has already said, the importance of checking in on your neighbors, friends, family members, if they are seniors, if they have young children, or underlying health conditions. Please check in on them. Make sure they have working AC. Make sure their AC is on. When we see deaths in this part of the country from heat, they're often indoors with people who have ACs, but the AC was not working or not turned on. So we just want to stress that, very important. If you are at risk and you do not have working AC, we encourage you to find a location for the next few days that does have AC. So I wanted to share those concerns. And again, just to highlight what our county executive said, it's never okay in the heat to leave a child, a pet, a senior, anybody in a parked car, even with the windows down. Those temperatures get to deadly temperatures within a few minutes. So just wanted to stress all that. And I'd like to now turn it over to Dr. Stoddard if he has any additional notes.
Thanks, Sean. I just want to dovetail, and I'll start where Sean ended there. If you do see a child or a pet left in the back of a car, please do call 911. I think we typically don't always encourage people to call 911 when it's something like this, but obviously this is life-threatening situation. You should absolutely call 911 if you observe this. The police will be coming lights and sirens, and that means that they're going to be responding priority to this situation. And if they have to, they will smash a window out and remove a child from the back of a seat of a car. That we take this very seriously. So if you observe someone who has left a child or a pet in the back of their car, it can only take a few minutes before people go into heat stroke and die. And so obviously we treat that as an emergency situation. If you aren't aware, we are currently conducting a search for a 16-year-old swimmer who went into the water at Great Falls on the Potomac River. It is strictly prohibited to go swimming. We talked about this in the press conference earlier this week because the conditions at the Great Falls are dangerous. And as this will be the second swimmer. We had previously a 20-year-old that had passed from swimming in the Potomac River. I know the temperatures are very hot. The Potomac River is not the place to swim, and the Great Falls themselves are incredibly dangerous. They have swift water. They have dangerous rocks. There's a reason why it is strictly prohibited to swim there. And obviously, we're hoping we find the 16-year-old alive, but obviously as the hours go on, that becomes less and less likely. And I think it's important to recognize this is not worth putting your life at risk to do. So I just wanted to highlight those few things that we did talk about earlier this week. But, during the press conference earlier this week, we were asked in part why we were doing this, why we were emphasizing this. It's exactly to try and prevent these sorts of situations where the conditions are life-threatening. We do not want people to die unnecessarily in Montgomery County because they made decisions that we could have warned them could have the consequences that they had. So please understand that and take this seriously.
Thank you. Before we open it up for the members of the media to ask questions, Director Albornoz, do you have any remarks, or are you going to wait for questions?
Thank you, Lorna. I'll just say briefly, those are tough acts to follow, really important messages all the way through. The Department of Recreation is excited to host two fantastic events, as the county executive noted, our first being on Friday, July 3rd at Einstein High School. As he also noted, there has been a slight time change, and the event will now start at 7:30, and we hope to shoot off the fireworks around 9:30. And the event in Germantown on the 4th of July will also begin at 7:30, and we also hope to shoot the fireworks off by approximately 9:30. We do encourage families to take necessary precautions. We have a partnership now with our colleagues in the Department of Transportation, and there will be ride-on buses sprinkled throughout both locations for people to simply be able to come out of the heat into an air-conditioned bus while we're waiting for the performances to go on. But we do ask people that they use common sense and that if you do suffer from heat-related conditions, you consider staying home. We do believe that it is safe enough to be able to have the event, and we anticipate going as scheduled, and we look forward to two fantastic nights to celebrate both our country and our county's history. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members of the media, any questions for the county executive? I see Talia Varelas, Univision DC. Go ahead, Talia.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my question. This question is for Gabe in Spanish, please. Y bueno, cuénteme, ¿cuál es su mensaje para miembros de la comunidad en estos próximos días con estas peligrosas temperaturas?
Sí va a ser peligroso, las temperaturas van a subir más de 100 de grados centígrados, así que tenemos que tener mucho cuidado. El condado está aquí para servirles.
Gabe, let's do that again. 100 grados Fahrenheit, no centígrados.
Perdón.
Gabe, ¿está bien si hago la pregunta otra vez para agarrar el Q&A?
Yep.
Ok, deme un segundito. Ok. Y bueno, cuénteme, ¿cuál es su mensaje para miembros de la comunidad en estos próximos días ante estas peligrosas temperaturas?
Bueno, va a ser mucho calor en los próximos 4 días, así que va a haber cada día más de 100 de grados Fahrenheit, así que la gente tiene que tener mucho cuidado. Sí vamos a mover adelante con los 2 eventos con el condado por los fuegos artificiales para celebrar la historia del condado y del país. Así que este viernes vamos a tener un evento en Einstein High School que empieza a las 7 de la noche. Los fuegos artificiales van a empezar a las 9:30. Y en Germantown, en el Soccerplex, también vamos a tener otro evento que empieza a las 7:30 y también los fuegos artificiales van a empezar a las 9:30 de la noche. Pero el mensaje para la comunidad es que tengan mucho cuidado y que por favor manténganse y chequean en sus vecinos para estar seguros que todo está bien. Y nosotros tenemos centros de recreación que van a estar abiertos el viernes y sábado para si necesitan un lugar donde va a haber aire acondicionado y también agua. Vamos a tener esos servicios disponibles para la comunidad. Así que por favor, protéjense.
Y también algo muy importante que mencionaron, si miembros de la comunidad se dan cuenta de que hay algún niño o alguna mascota en un auto desatendido, ¿qué es lo que deberían de hacer?
Deben llamar al 911. Eso es sumamente importante.
Listo, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Talia. Marianne Chassat, Montgomery Community Media. Marianne, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to ask about White's Ferry. So I think yesterday, July 1st, was the deadline for some negotiations to happen. And I think a couple weeks ago, you were still seeming hopeful, even if the negotiations weren't reached by yesterday. But we wanted to ask, is there any progress there?
I would probably have to defer and have our transportation people get back to you. There's progress. When we set that deadline, situation has changed in terms of who we're working with and how it's moving forward. So I feel pretty good that we're on that path. But closure is going to require a little bit more from the state of Virginia to make this work. That's our goal, and so we're working with them to make sure we can put something together. But I'm the most optimistic I've been about this since this thing unraveled. And I think our folks who have been working with the current ferry owner on the Montgomery County side and the state of Virginia are more optimistic than they've been before. With the different leadership in Virginia, there's more openness to solving this problem. So we will get there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. You turn on your camera. Do you have a question?
I do. One
Go
more
ahead,
is my
go ahead.
last one. This probably is for Dr. Stoddard. Is there anything that you can tell us at this point about the status of that Swiftwater rescue operation? Is it still being considered a rescue? Has it shifted to a recovery, or what's going on?
It's still considered a rescue. Actually, I sent a text confirming this during the call. We typically will operate for about the first 12 hours as a rescue operation. And so it was about 6 a.m. this morning. So that would tell you that we're still hopeful during the first 12 hours, but at about 6 o'clock this evening, it would move to a recovery operation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of the media, any additional questions for the county executive and officials this afternoon? No more questions? Well, thank you. Stay safe. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.